Hello, everyone. This is Coresair Mack, President of the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association. And today I'm joined by the one and only Hector Zavala. How are you doing today, Hector?
I'm doing well, Corsair. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Happy Saturday. I'm awake, thankfully.
Right?
Yes.
That's the important thing.
Got my 7 hours of sleep, and now I'm here and ready to go.
Hey, that's the most important thing is just keeping going.
Exactly. All right. So, question number one, all your fans want to know, how did you become interested in counseling?
Oh my gosh. So this is an interesting story. And for fans, I didn't know I had you. Thank you. But I started off with um I had a class in high school. It was a psychology class, and I loved psychology in high school. And we did this lemon experiment. It was this weird experiment that our instructor was having us do. And I said, I really like this, and I started getting into sort of areas of psychology that I didn't know were possible, like early childhood and just various sort of aspects that I didn't think about. So I said, I really sort of like this. So I just kept going in that route. I was like, I think psychology is what I want to do because I liked it. I understood it. And so I did that, and I did my undergraduate at Elmhurst University. Now it was Elmhurst College back then, and I did, I got my degree in psych, and I said, what am I going to do with this? I was like, that's the one thing I didn't plan for. Is like, what am I going to do when I graduate with an undergrad in psych? So I started pursuing everything I could. So I worked initially at a residential inpatient place um, with children with various diagnoses, so trauma and neglect and abuse, and some storied histories that are just, amazingly, just amazing stuff for these kids and the resilience that they had. Um, and I said, okay, I'm like, this is all right, but I'm sort of getting tired of punched, kicked, bit, and scratched. What else can I do with this, right? So I was like, I'm basically human cannon fodder, and I knew I was sort of sick of it when I could look at another human being biting on my arm, and I was like, hmm, okay. And it literally, like, the other human was like, you should be screaming in pain. And I'm just like, hmm, yeah, that happened. And then you go to the doctor's like, are you in pain? I'm like, oh yeah, it was painful. Like I'm in a lot of pain, but I'm gonna show it. And so I just said, okay. So I started pursuing other areas, like what can you do with an undergraduate in psychology, right? So I looked at criminal justice, and I worked in detention, I worked in probation, I worked in sort of this area of just working with these folks that have been there, especially with youth. Um, Boy, I'm telling you now, that's a toll. So I said, okay, well, not really something I like because I don't like the mindset that I'm walking in, that these folks are, and everybody there sort of shared the mindset, hey, they're criminals. Like they did this, they're wrong. And I'm like, but what if they can change? Right? Like what, just what if? And there was a guy there who was older, who was like, you need to hang on to that mentality, Hector. And I was like, I'm hoping to, but it's hard. And he's like, well, I've done this for 30 years and I've held on to that mentality. And I was just like, I don't know how. Like it just couldn't reconcile with how much people were saying these are criminals, right? And so I said, okay, there's got to be something better. Like, how do we intervene before we get to this point? Like, before they get to these abused, neglected kids, before they become those kids, before they become these incarcerated folks because they've had this sort of inability to process and do this stuff. So I was like, what else can I do with this undergraduate psych degree? And I was a case manager for DCFS. I was actually contracted, subcontractor for DCFS. Um, and that was the hardest job I've ever done. I walked into homes with families that had just had their kids taken away, and I'm telling them what to do, and I'm telling them how to get their kids back, and all these things that they need to do. And it's hard because you're trying to give hope when you don't know anything. Like, you genuinely don't know. And unless they have a good lawyer, right? So unless they're like from a fairly middle to upper level income level, or SES, they really, there's no guarantee that these folks may get their kids back, And so I'm just in there sort of trying to go through the motions. And I remember there was one case specifically. I walked in, and this was a woman who was about 8 months pregnant. She was gearing towards about 9. 2 daughters. Her youngest child had bruises from head to toe. I mean, visible bruising. And I remember walking in the family, the DCFS folks, the folks who come in, do the investigation, and again, have to separate the families for safety or whatever. I get that. There have been huge issue, right? And I told this company that I was with, I said, hey, look, the one thing I won't do is I won't separate kids. Like, I can't. Like, that to me is a level I'm not that person, right? I'm not a cop. I'm not a federal agent. I'm not anybody. Like, who am I to be like, yeah, you're an unfit parent? Like, I didn't see that, right? So for me, I think that day was the day when I met this family, and I was like, okay. And I went through the case, and I went through everything, and I told them, hey, look, here are the things that you're probably going to need to start doing, just based off of history, right? Just based off of what I knew was going to be happening, what I knew courts would want, that sort of stuff. There's some similarities in how courts work. And so I remember, we're going through things, and they're about 3 weeks, and things are going well, right? But the family and the father denied anything going wrong, right? It's not our fault, blah, 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 blah. I wouldn't walk into your house and take your kids away. I wouldn't tell you how to parent. You're right. I'm not telling you how to parent. I'm just telling you that things didn't look right, and people were concerned. Well, why would they be concerned? Da, da, da. It's none of their business. Okay. I get that. I do. And I remember that day because like I had gotten consistent phone calls, right? Like, there had just been phone calls after phone calls. These folks had gotten a hold of my cell phone number, like a private number of mine, and it called me on like Thanksgiving to want me to try to set something up for Thanksgiving for them to be with their daughter. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, that's not the situation. And I'm like, I'm not at work. I can't help you right now. If this is a crisis, you need to go to the hospital. Right. And I remember at Christmas, they called me again. And I was like, no. I was like, okay, now we're starting to cross boundaries. Like, this is becoming an issue, right? But it wasn't until the mom gave birth to their 3rd child that I realized that something was truly wrong. And I should have, you should read the signs before, but I didn't, because I was naive. I thought, hey, companies are going to protect you, and companies can do the right thing, and they uphold their words and all that stuff. And I remember that day that the baby was born. I remember going to the hospital, and I was told by my supervisor, hey, you're going to have to go to the hospital. The family had the baby, blah, 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 blah. The investigator's going to be there. They're probably going to take the baby, da, 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 da. I was like, okay, routine stuff. And they're like, oh, yeah, don't forget to take a car seat. And I was like, what? Like, why do I need a car seat? Oh, just in case. And you need to help the investigator. I was like, stop. What? And I'm like, okay. So here I am, a person who's never had kids fumbling around with a car seat, trying to put one into my car, which I've never done before. Right. And so I drive to the hospital, and I get there, and the family, at this point, we had built up plenty of trust. Finally got the father to admit, hey, look, yeah, the way my daughter looked wasn't right. And maybe we did falter as parents, and we could have done more. and we'll figure that out. Like, we'll fix that. We can get better. I'm like, cool, we're on the right path. I get there, and DCFS, because they have an active case, they're going to take the baby just to make sure. They want everybody to be safe. Da, 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 da. Okay. So the father's like, I don't want anybody else but you touching my baby. And I'm like, this infant's like a day old, like just born, genuinely. Like, what do you want me to do? And so it's like, oh yeah, no, if this baby has to leave the hospital, then you're the one that has to take the baby. It's like, cool. So I will handle the baby in this car seat carrier to the door, and then it goes in somebody else's car because it's not coming in my car. I said that I can't do that. That wasn't the case. I was left with this infant child to drive to this location where the other siblings are. I remember that day being the most frightening day of my life. Here I am with a child that is not biologically mine, that I'm in charge of and keeping safe from a hospital to this temporary placement, hoping nobody hits me. Like you're hoping not for a car accident, right? You're like, oh my God, don't hit me, don't hit my car. And I remember that day being like, I didn't sign up for this. This isn't what I wanted from psychology. This isn't what I wanted for my life. And I went home and I remember being broken. Like, internally, something in me, ethically, morally, was just stripped away. Like, I had just signed away the very essence of what makes me. And I remember sitting there saying, I can't do this. Like, this isn't right. Like, I could go into somebody's home if they're absolutely horrible people and they're mistreating a kid. Yeah, I have justification to save a kid. Sure, absolutely, right? But not people that are doing it right. Like, the people that are getting it together, why are we punishing them? And I thought to myself, if this is the pinnacle of what I could do with a BA in psych, I don't want to do this. There's got to be something better. I remember a case of mine. I was this kid I drove, which, driving kids was not a big deal for me. I was like, all right, I got to drive you from here to therapy or whatever. Not a big deal. Like, that's part of the job. Okay. But not like hey, you're a DCFS, like, investigator taking a kid on an active case. That's not the job. That's not what I said. I'm a caseworker. I'm a low-level grunt. I'm making sure they do everything or don't do everything, write the reports, and let the courts decide. But I remember this kid. I remember driving to this place, and I was like, boy, this place looks really nice. It looked like this. I don't know. I want to call it. It was like a gym in the middle of, like, woods. Like, I remember almost looking like a red barn, right? And I was like, what do they do here? And, like, I look at the sign, and, like, I forget what this was. This was pre-iPhone, right? So it's like Google was not a normal thing. And I was like, I wonder what they do here. I'm gonna write that down. And I was like, why don't I just ask my client, my kid that I just dropped off, and I gotta bring him back anyways. We might as well have a conversation. And I just remembered, I'm like, hey, what do you do when I take you here? Like, I'm interested, like, what do you do? He looked at me deadpan in the face. And I could remember my reaction, but deadpan looked at me in the face and said, I play games. What? Wait, hold on. I'm supposed to be taking you to counseling. Yeah. You play games? That's not counseling. You mean you don't, like, sit in a chair and talk to somebody? I mean, like, I answer questions, but no. Like, I play with stuff. Like, we play board games or we play. And I was like, that lazy, like, first thought in my head, I was like, that's the laziest person I've ever met. Like, he's charging how much an hour for playing games with a kid? I was like, I can do that. I mean, again, little did I know what was really going on, but it was that memory along with that experience that said, that's what I want to do. I want to be the guy that has that interaction with that kid or a client where it's not forced, it's not this like I hate this, it's this, hey, come on in, let's just have a chat. Like, it can't hurt you. Let's talk. And I've never regretted that because I remember the conversation. My wife was like, so what are we going to do? I don't know, but I can't do this. And because of her, and I give her a lot of credit, she pushed me into grad school when I had very little confidence in myself, especially at a very low moment professionally. But it was that sort of encouragement and that memory of that kid where I was just like, that dude is like the laziest person ever. Like, how do you get away with that? Like, I couldn't get away from that, and I couldn't conceptualize what that like that was play therapy, right? Like, I was like, what do you mean you play games? Like, nobody, that's not therapy. Like, that's not how it's presented. Like, you're supposed to sit on a couch and cry and like having like a moment or something, right? I'm like, I don't know how you do it with a kid, but apparently that's what you do. Um, Again, these sort of preconceived notions, but if it wasn't for that client and that moment where I was like, you get to play games? Hold on, I need to learn more about this. Um, that yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be down this path, and I wouldn't have started where I am.
Definitely. Wow. The experiences that we have, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's it. It's everything happens. Uh, Everything is supposed to happen for a reason. I say that cautiously because there are some experiences you can never fully explain.
Oh yeah.
But that that just happened to be the perfect storm of everything coming together and being like, hey, this is the pathway you have to go on.
Yeah, that definitely is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much. I agree. So I know you mentioned that your wife pushed you into grad school. So where
Yes.
did you go to grad school?
So I went to Argosy University, that is now defunct. They were K-Cup accredited back in '09. My whole time that I was there, thank God.
Mhm.
They were an amazing place filled with nothing but ICA folks. uh, Illinois Counseling Association folks. I want to make sure I say that. And they were always pushing the networking, and they were always pushing the connection, and they were always pushing the um, you've got to be a part of the field and part of the organization to understand what's happening and how to make headways and progress towards various actions that are a part of what we do. And back then I was like, I just want to know how to do this. Like I can care less about this part. But I get it now. I get it so much now. Not even the employment piece, but I just get the advocacy. I get the necessity that we have, and it's so much larger when we're a collective voice in lieu of like fragmented pockets of people that we're just trying to throw at something. So yeah, Argosy is where I got my master's, and I finishing up my doctorate at Adler.
Oh, wow.
Um, and yeah,
Wow. Pre-congratulations then.
thank you, thank you. Yeah, I'm crossing my fingers.
All
So
right.
we're always
Oh.
appreciate that.
All right. So how long have you been doing therapy for?
This is going to be my well, it depends. I mean, if you count program time, so like the time you start practicum and internship and all that stuff, I'm looking at this is my 12th year, probably. I think so. Yeah, this is my 12th year. If you don't count that time, this is like 11. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, nice. Like I said, a lot longer than I've been in it. I got to do the math on mine again, but yeah, you've definitely been in this a lot longer than I have.
I'm like, I always do the math. I'm like, I've been in psychology for 16, and then I've done counseling for like 11 or 12 years, depending on where you count. I was like, if you count practicum, which you have to, like, that's when you first start, like,
Yeah.
start putting all of this knowledge into practice. Um, yeah, it's been 12 years.
Mhm. All right. So I know you've talked about your experiences when you were, or after you did your undergraduate degree.
Mhm.
So, after you graduated with your master's degree, what places did you work at starting off in your profession, and what did you learn as a result from working at those places?
So I have worked in quite a few places. So I have worked first. Because I didn't utilize my connections with Illinois Counseling Association, the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association, the various divisions that I'm a part of now, to network and really learn more about what was available to me. I ended up moving to New Mexico in
Okay.
2011, where I was a part of a nonprofit organization. It was Carlsbad Mental Health Center back then.
Mhm.
We served we just served the town basically. It was Carlsbad, which is an hour and a half from almost all of civilization. So like
Mhm.
hour and a half north of El Paso, an hour and a half from like Artesia, or Roswell, like if you're into like Area 51 and the aliens and all that stuff. And then it's like an hour and a half to like anything else around it. So it's a very isolated place. It's the caverns,
Oh,
but its big draw is oil money, right? It does a lot of drilling. It does a lot of like pipeline work, and these folks make a lot of good money, but they also use a lot of drugs, lots and lots of
oh,
amphetamines and methamphetamines. I mean, these guys are like jacked up almost 24/7. Um, and so I did a lot of substance use work there first. I did individual therapy with some kids, with some individual clients. And then I also did an expulsion alternative program. So I didn't work as a school counselor. What I did was offer a school social emotional learning program adjacent to school teaching. So there was a teacher that I was a part of, and then I did some social emotional learning along with some physical activity and some other things that we did to round out an actual academic day for students who had been expelled from elementary and middle school,
um,
which when we first started was only 2 students. And by the time we ended, we were somewhere near 40.
oh,
Yeah, kids get expelled a lot, apparently,
mhm.
um, which is a surprise. But the beautiful part was our program was meant to be a reintegration program, right? So it was an ability for folks to work on some of the social emotional needs or the students to work on their social emotional needs to be able to reintegrate and not lose a grade, right? And be able to come back and reintegrate back to their next grade level and still continue to thrive. What we found is we were a 96% success rate. Actually, 98. I'm sorry. I misattributed my data. I had a 96% show rate, which was astonishing for the clinic because most of their show rates were like in the 70s, maybe 80, 83. And they're like, you're like a 96. What do you do? And I'm like, I'm just me. Like, I don't know. I don't know what's different. Like, I can't tell you. And so they were always impressed by like how this worked and how that worked, which was great because the school system was like, hey, why don't we do like an in-school suspension alternative program, like based off of this? And so like they wanted to build like from my model, a model for like, okay, you're still in school, but in lieu of being suspended, you're here still in school, right? The premise of this program was again, these kids get expelled or suspended, they're at home, but their parents still have to work. And so what utility are we actually serving? What happens is these kids um, ended up on the streets and working with sureños, and typically ended up being part of a much worse lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so a part of this became not just doing a lot of this sort of curriculum with these students. So like, again, school counseling, but without the certification. So sort of like an adjacent, like outside thing. Um, but also individual counseling for children and adolescents, along with couples and families, and then substance use counseling. So I did that there. And the one thing that I learned was I was encroaching on territory, right? Even with the best intentions, you have to also humble yourself. And so there was a gentleman's agreement. Well, let's call it that. I don't want to use stereotype language, right? There was a sort of head nod agreement. As long as I didn't force my system on any person, there wasn't going to be outside interference. As long as I also didn't interfere on the outside with other operations that were going on, because that would mean not good things. So, um, and there was a very basic agreement that, the beautiful thing about this, and I think the thing that people don't always understand about certain lifestyles, is that people don't want people to fall into that. They want them to succeed and live a normal life. But if it's turned away, it's not your place to try to be a savior, right? Like don't mess if it's not your place. So the one thing I learned a lot there was humility. Um, I wasn't the end all be all, even though I had these great rates and I could blow myself up. Like that was irrelevant. I could lose a kid to anything. Um, and when I was doing the substance use, it was primarily a lot with rig hands and those sorts of guys that worked on the lines. The one thing I learned there was um, relapse is always going to happen, but the consequences of relapse are so much more monumental. So like when we think about metropolises out here, right? Folks think about relapse as, oh, it might affect a family or it might affect them, income, finances, da 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 da. When I was out there, a relapse for a person, or even if they, I'm gonna put it this way, a relapse for them is to actually be sober, right? So it's them not being on a substance. So relapse out there meant that somebody would fall asleep at a rig, which meant problems down the line. We had that happen. Um, this is where humility really sort of came in for me. Had a case. This was a new person who was coming in, but the group was affected by it. Everybody was affected by it in this group because this was the big company that hired. And I knew about this because one of the mentions, and I can say this because this is a public disclosure, was again, my company can put out an ad to hire people and we'll get 100 applications, but we can only get one person to pass a drug screen. So it's like, you get 100 applications, you can only get one that can actually pee cleanly. That's not a problem. But this situation, this person came to the group, and again, knowing that this was a group that had rig workers and all that stuff. Became a this was a news story, big news story. There was an explosion on one of the lines. It killed about 20 people. And so this client came in and had identified as not having enough meth to have been able to stay awake.
Wow.
Right. So here you have a group of folks who are trying to make a commitment to be sober. Right? They're trying. All we can ask. Here is a kid who literally is coming in saying, I didn't do enough, which caused 20 people to die. I'm just, I'm blown away. I'm like as a clinician, what do I say to you that's in any way empathetic right now that makes me even want to be like, what? Like I had to learn like, hey, you got to take yourself the hell out of it. Like, and that whole trust the group thing really came in because there was an older gentleman who had been around for a while, had a few words. Trusting the group was the right thing, but it was humbling because I was just like, there are going to be things that people say that you just don't know how to react or how to respond to. I mean, how do you respond to the person that's alleged to have created an issue that took the lives of 20 people? I don't even know how to respond to that. And this is a confidential group. Anything you say here stays here. And it was interesting. I then being isolated though was a problem, right? Because we're an hour and a half away from everything. My wife and I were like, well, we can't go out because most of the times when you're out, and I run a substance use group where hey, sobriety is like kind of the thing, like that's the model they followed. So you had to tout it. You're like, all right, you gotta stay sober. Yay! Here's a worksheet for sobriety. Um, it didn't connect with me. Like the whole like you got to stay sober. I've learned myself I'm a harm reductionist, right? I appreciate the whole model of like, hey, we can go through this and get to a safe way to sobriety without going to complete abstinence. Um, and so I learned that not being able to go to the grocery store was hard because the one grocery store like Albertsons, that was the one store outside of Walmart that you could buy anything at. And I, on principle, don't shop at Walmart because of like social justice things.
Yeah.
But when you can only go to Albertsons and then like that's where you get most of your groceries, there's only two stores you can run your clients into to go get groceries. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, either not go shopping, not acknowledge them get mad that I didn't acknowledge them, watch them buy substances that they shouldn't have. Like they, again, they're supposed to abstain from everything because that was the model.
Right.
So, like, as the clinician, I'm like, how do I deal with this in a small town? I was like, yeah, I don't know. And so, like, I stopped going out. Like, I was like, nope, can't go to the theater because I might run into a client. Like, I'm like, no, I can't. So I decided to come. I found a place up here. I worked for the Therapy Tree, which worked with young kiddos that were with autism spectrum disorder, and I loved working with them. Man, these kids were so honest and so much fun. But I had so much more I had to learn. There were so many things that I wish I had been prepared for because, like, working in a school system with neurotypical kids is very different than working in a school system with neurodivergent kids, right? So there, I mean, and again, some of my kiddos might have had some neurodivergence, but we were able to adjust our day. Like we had tactics that we could do because we weren't regular school, the program. So for me, I was like, okay, I could do those things. But when you're looking at sort of a regular therapeutic setting, I'm like, what do I do? This is weird. Like, I'm used to like thinking on the fly, being on my feet and trying to figure out where we're at. And so I learned a lot from them. Um, and I mean, these kiddos were probably some of the best. I absolutely love them. They had my heart. Um, I decided that I wanted to go to a passion that had been in my heart, but I was afraid to express for a long time after that, which was to do college counseling. Specifically, I wanted to work with undergraduates because my experiences in high school and college were very short sighted. I really didn't have a lot of guidance. I had to navigate this myself. which made it really hard for me because you're the only one doing this. You don't see anybody else like you doing this. Um, and so I said, I want to do something better for my community. And so I started as a college counselor at Triton College. Um, and I worked there for quite a few years, working with various populations and students, where I developed this idea of a lot of my research being this narrative technique that I am calling poetic identity intervention. So it's based off of narrative storytelling and techniques. So, utilizing sort of poetry as a frame to write our identities, and being integrating those. Yeah. So I'm hoping to publish that and put that out soon. And I found a lot of success. I'm again, this is sort of why I'm like just finishing up little tail end things to be able to publish and get things done. But um, that then led me to being a counselor educator. And yeah, while I was at Triton, I opened up my private practice, of which I've done a lot of like couples work. So I do a lot of working with couples and families, marriages. I love doing that because I don't have to do a lot of work. Um, I subscribe to the Gottman method methodology. I'm not certified. I'm not, I don't want to get sued. I'm not like fully certified to say all of that, but I really appreciate the perspective and some of the approach. So I'm hoping to finish that off. But yeah, and I work with individuals and still with kids. But right now I'm looking more sort of at because of the pandemic, I'm looking at at sort of a restructure into more of a remote practice right now, just for life balance sake. But that's been my journey in counseling so far.
Again, a lot of great insight. A lot of those things I really didn't think about, but when you put them into perspective, it's like, wow, their relapse is their sobriety. And I'm just like, that just blew me away. I was like, I didn't even think about that.
And but and we wouldn't, right? Because like a schedule down for them is like 7 days straight, 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's not like legally, it's not what they do, right? Because they claim, oh, they'll sleep, but they don't because they're up. And this is when that happened, is in that overnight hours when they're supposed to be okay to sleep, but they shouldn't be asleep.
Mhm.
And so I mean, yeah, these guys make, like I said, if I didn't, if I had found them first, I may have gone and done that. Because they will make like $100,000 a month, like after taxes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm in the wrong field. I,
Yeah.
like in 1 month of your work, I can pay my degree off. Um, but I mean, the amount of work that they have to put in, and the hours they put in is just what they have to put their body through to do that
Yeah.
is so insane. And so to even think about relapse, where we would say, oh, you're going to reuse a substance, that's normal, that happens. It's like, oh, you stopped using. What did that cause you? What happened there? And it's just this sort of thought of like, okay, how do we get you to be safe and not use, and really redefine this relapse thing? Because it was so mind blowing.
Mhm. Well, yeah, I agree. Like I said, I'm still blown away by that. So I know you talk about a lot of experiences out in the world. And
Yeah.
then, like you mentioned, you brought it back to working at the colleges. So also another thing that you do at the colleges is you teach, right?
Yes.
So what was that process? What was the process that led you to teach in adult and higher education?
So again, I started in college counseling, right? I started at Triton College as a college counselor, and part of that is that I'm faculty. I was faculty, and I was able to teach.
Mhm.
And I discovered that I love it. I love teaching. I also discovered that I was a disorganized mess before,
Oh,
and I needed a lot of help, because I am neurodivergent, right? So I have some areas that I didn't know until I was an adult that I needed to tackle. And so for me, a part of that was learning that I love to collaborate with my students to engage in learning, not impart knowledge. Like it's not my job to be the puppet on the stand. Like I'm not like, oh, there's a power differential, but it's a, hey, let's really take a deep dive and look into how you learn and what these concepts mean and how does that look for you.
Mhm.
And so I've really started learning that more recently because my students have done a phenomenal job at always giving me feedback. And so because of them, I have adapted my style to better match what they need, and to better match what they hope they want to receive from me in the future. And so it's really given me something so much more, especially now that I was teaching sort of like career courses in terms of the community college, but then I've left into sort of this graduate clinical mental health counseling and teaching those courses. Yeah, I love this because it's working and thinking about ourselves and how we're going to be clinicians. And when I jumped into this, I used to think, oh, I have to teach you how to be this way. And I was like, no, you have to learn from yourself what's getting in the way. I can't tell you that. And that was always my hang up when I first started teaching the graduate courses was I have to give them value and I have to give them this. And I was just like, you know what? I don't. Their clients are going to give them all that. Like I have to be able to help them see themselves, right? And be able to reflect on what this means for them and how this affects them. How theory connects with them and what that means for them. How does an Adlerian perspective or an existential perspective or Gestalt, whatever it might be, how does that relate to them? How does that relate to how they're going to see people and how they're going to treat people, right? And that's the real beautiful part is that I've started to take that step back and say, I don't have to impart knowledge. I have to help you engage with it and really understand what it means for you. And so I have appreciated for any of my students that ever see this or former students. I apologize for not understanding that perspective before. Um, you have taught me so much more than you know, and I thank you for that. Um, and being a dad taught me that too, but you know, it's a little bit of a lot of B.
Right.
So,
All right. So then a little bit of a side note, what was your favorite class to teach?
my favorite class to teach so far has been oh my gosh, there's so many to list, Corsair. You're making this hard. Okay, favorite one just based off topic
Mhm.
is going to be skills. Love teaching the skills because I love seeing students take where they are into where do they want to head as clinicians and really see them take shape with like the questionings and the intent. That's the stuff that really is a lot of fun for me.
Right. Perfect. Well, everybody, you heard it first. His favorite class so far, skills.
Yeah, well, the one of them, right? I love multicultural.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, multicultural is fun and broaching and all the skills required for broaching. And I mean, Corsair, there's so much stuff. It just
Mhm.
you're making me pick out of all of them, and that's hard, man. That's like saying who's your favorite dog or who's your favorite child. Like, come on, man. There's no favorite. Everything is great.
Don't worry, had to put you on a spot just a little bit. Right.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. So I know you mentioned your private practice a lot. So I know your private practice is Light of Hope Counseling and Consultation. So what was the process that led you to wanting to start your own private practice?
Um, I wanted to be on my own. I think working in an agency or working at a practice was really nice, but I didn't feel like I had vested interest in shaping policy or shaping practices or employment, um, how people were trained. I just felt like I was another person.
Mhm.
And some practices, like, you know, there's some places that are like, oh, you're an employee, you're a W-2, and it's like, okay, then that means I report to somebody. And some places it's like, oh, you're a 1099, which means you're an independent contractor. So then I don't report to anybody. So you're just giving, like, I'm renting space. So then what's our relationship? It's a little ambiguous or nebulous as to what's going to happen if our contract isn't clear. And so for me, I was just like, I don't want that. I don't want that for myself, and I don't want to build that for something in the future. And if, I get to a really nice, successful place where I can start bringing tons and tons of things on board and doing all the things that I hoped and dreamed of, um, I want it clear, right? Like if somebody's an independent contractor, all right, cool. Here's our relationship. Like if you need supervision, we're going to add that onto this contract. It's an addendum. If you don't need it, then you're just renting space. But, you just tell me something that's broken and I'll fix it. It's like a landlord deal. I don't want to interfere with somebody's sort of situation. But like if they're an employee, then I want to be like, all right, I want to help you grow. I want to help you develop. But I want to see them also be like, hey, what do you want from this? Like, do you want to invest in this? Like, I want employees that want to invest in the company that they're in. Like, I want them to take part of that ownership, right? I want them to feel like they are cared enough, that this matters to them and that they matter. At the end of the day, it's not about just building that culture and relationship, but it's also about ensuring that their input in how policies are written and how things are done really did matter to me. And I didn't realize it at first. I was just like, I just want to be on my own right now. Like I just want to do my thing and figure out like what I need to pay and all that stuff. Um, but as I've started to grow, I've started to see like here's what I really want. Like I want this place where people will say this is home,
Mhm.
right? Like I go here and it's not like I miss my kids. I do, right? Like I miss my family, but I don't feel that huge miss, right? Like I want to be that employer that says, yeah, you need to bring your kid, bring them in. Like we'll figure out a way to have daycare or childcare here so that you're around and that you're here. Like I want that in the long run, right? I want to be able to do a lot of things. Big dreams. But I got to, I've got to tailor those things. I got to start with the first building blocks.
Right. Well, I mean, true. Big dreams always start somewhere, but it's good to have that starting place because you're moving towards those dreams.
That's the hope.
All right. So, speaking of your private practice, a lot of clinicians are always curious about the process of starting a private practice. I mean, you know me, I was in Norm's private
Yes.
practice workshop. And even then, there was a lot of things that I had to do to really get it up and running. So, what was your process and what hurdles did you have to leap over to finally start your private practice, if there were any to begin with?
Well, I think first was navigating the CAQH website. That was that website is always just goofy
Yeah.
because there's always like this little thing or that little thing or you didn't do this or you didn't attest to this. So it was always just getting that sort of piece. The other pieces that I didn't think about, especially, were sort of like the federal filings and like
Oh, yeah.
the fiend, like getting your sort of income number, your income tax number with the federal government, or even registering for your business license in the state. Um, all the like the small things that I was just like, oh, you mean I can't just like do this thing and just provide services? Oh, okay. Well, I didn't realize that. Um, like getting liability, I was like, well, that's natural. Like you got to have liability. But like those small things I didn't realize, especially like the value of CAQH and how much Blue Cross Blue Shield uses it, or how much other folks pick up on it and use it. And like, who is that? I think it was like Cigna or somebody who contacted. I don't even remember. Cigna, Aetna, one of those two. That were like, oh, hey, your CAQH isn't completely up to date. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like, guys, okay, yeah, I get it. Like, my one license isn't up to date. Like, I just updated. I'm waiting 2 weeks. Like, it's still not expired. And so it's like just jumping the rigmarole where it's like, okay, hey, y'all just need to like, I don't need to respond to every insurance because it's like this will take its effect in a minute. But yeah, CAQH I think was the biggest one, and then filing for my federal employer's identification number I think was the other one.
Mhm. I know. It seems like when you finish one thing, another thing just pops right up that you just got to take care of.
Right? You're like, oh my gosh, all right.
what's next? What's next? It's like, okay, you look around. Anything else?
Yeah.
No. Then you start backing away slowly. It's like anything else, and then boom, something just comes up. You're just like, ah, fine, I'll
Right.
take care of that. Mhm. Right, exactly. All right. So then, with your prior practice that you have, what projects are you currently working on, and what projects have you completed that you want to share with everybody?
Well, big project right now that I'm working on is going remote, right? So I'm trying to build telehealth, turning my business into a more telehealth based business, especially because I see such a need, and with the counseling compact coming on at a real rapid rate. I mean, I'm seeing these states coming through crazy. And Corsair, I think we would be remiss if we didn't jump on this, in all honesty, from a counseling perspective. I think it's just a matter of time for us to get into that. I'm working on various state licenses to get into that, just because I want to be able to say, hey, look, I'm a telehealth practitioner, because a lot of states are going to be very rural,
Mhm.
right? And so there's going to be some folks who have internet access that can't drive. This is a great way to access these folks, and I want to give them the ability to have an actual clinician that isn't BetterHelp or Talkspace, because those folks, and looking into those platforms, um, I'm not going to speak negatively, because I don't, again, the whole Sue thing, but it just seems that the best intentions may not always be delivered in the best ways. Right. And so I would want to take those precautions where I'm like, hey, look, I'm fully licensed. I fully know what I'm doing. I've done my research. I can look into these things. I know the best practices, which is why I'm also working on the NBCC's board certified telemental health certification, just to make sure I cover all my P's and Q's, where Talkspace and BetterHelp don't necessarily require those things. Right. And so if I'm going to be ethical, I want to practice in the utmost ethical way, right? And so I don't want to short vent something that I think would be best for the client. So that's the big project. I think the what I'm near finishing is sort of my research, and I really want looking forward to some positive there, and hopefully building some inroads in some places where I think this would be a really effective intervention in colleges. And then really, I want to examine the broader area where we can apply this intervention, maybe in other areas with other populations, other diagnoses. So, couple irons in the fire, but the ones that are cooling off now are really this identity project, and then the ones that are heating up right now are really the telehealth.
All right, perfect. So you heard it here, folks. Hector is going international.
I'm going national, right? International. I'll let time decide.
Right. Okay, that's fair. I'm dreaming big for you. I'm
I
dreaming big
love it.
for you there.
Corsair, I love it. I love it. If it happens, buddy, I'll bring you along. I'll be like, you know what? It's because of Corsair. That's why.
Yeah, I'll be
You
sitting
know.
here doing counseling for someone in Ireland. I'll be like, yeah, thank Hector for this one.
Yeah, I'll be like, hey, look, man, this is where to go. But no, I want to. I really want to do this, and I really think that there are ways that we can do this in a very integrated way that will help a lot of folks. But I want to do this where we're not convoluting this process.
Mhm. Which
So
is 100% understandable, right? Again, fingers crossed for everything. All right. So, speaking of that stuff and things that you're working on, you've been a very busy person, right? So, some of the things you were past president of the Illinois Association for Couples and Family Counseling. You're currently co-chair of the Leadership and Development Academy.
mhm.
You were a parliamentarian for ICA, and you are a chair on the Bylaws Committee.
Yes.
So a lot of stuff, a lot of stuff. So let's start with the first one and work our way down. So what led you to want to run for president of the Illinois Association for Couples and Family Counseling?
Um, that would be Roseanne Oppen. I fully give her credit, but also Kathy Wells and quite a few folks down there, Nate, Gillum, and just the amazing folks that were in that division that were just like, hey, we need somebody. You want to do it? And I'm like, okay. I don't know what I'm doing, but okay. And then we didn't have anybody the year that I was supposed to step off, and so I kept it. And then we found somebody. But I did it because I had fun. I had these dreams of things that I wanted to accomplish. And I'm seeing a lot of that right now. I like, a lot of like the current leadership and whatnot. They're doing such a good job, such an amazing job. Things that I couldn't put together. Again, my neurodivergence didn't really allow me to put the focus where it needed to be. But it was an amazing sort of journey because again, I said, I want one day to see IACFC have their own conference, right? Have their own little like IMHCA or IASGW or any of the other sort of divisions or chapters. I really just wanted them to have that one kickoff thing, and they're getting there. I really do believe they're getting there. They put themselves in such a good way, and they're just an amazing group of folks. And I met a lot of folks, right? I met Kevin Stouffer, and I met Roseanne Ottman and Kathy Wells, and I met Rosemary. Well, no, I knew Dr. Cairo from my master's program, but I was able to connect with so many folks. So it was just a very different sort of ideology and perspective. And I just wanted us to have a home for folks that wanted to do marriage, couples, and family work, right? Like just keep that going for them. So yeah.
All right. So then another side note question. So what are some accomplishments that, if you can remember, I don't know how long ago this was, but what are some accomplishments when you were president that you are proud of? And what are some things that you wish you had more time to work on, if anything?
I wish I had more time to have gotten a conference together for IACFC. One of the things that I think I could say I was proud of is the fact that um, we got ourselves going on a newsletter, of which I don't know where that is right now. I want to double check with them because I think I'm still a member of them, but I haven't gotten one in a while. But we had a newsletter that we had going, and we got some folks that were presenters at a couple of the conferences. So pretty proud of that because we were able to sort of like see our folks in action, right? It was really cool to watch that.
Right, definitely. So then, with the being co-chair of the Leadership Development Academy, a past parliamentarian for ICA and current chair of the Bylaws Committee, so what led you to being active in all of those things?
My big mouth.
Oh,
I said, can't we do something more? Can't we do better? Um, and Pat McGinn, who I give tons of credit for, and Jessica Dyrick looked at me and said, "Oh yeah, okay, fine. Why don't you take this workshop?" I was going to be considered, I think, for the first LDA, but I had moved out of state, and then I came back, and they were it was like an off year for LDA. And so I said, okay, well, let me know when I can be a part of it. And then I said, yeah, this experience was nice, but is there anything more we can do? And so Pat McGinn and Jessica Dyrick were like, okay, it's a good thing you have opinions. Got to join the committee. And I'm like, darn it. I was like, I shouldn't have said anything. Oh, darn. But no, I appreciated every moment because I was able then to sort of, we were able to develop LDA2. And then we got a new committee together when Jessica Dyrick stepped away for a little while. She had her baby, and then she came back. Just clarifying, I was like she didn't like leave or something like that. But we were able then to have Kevin Stouffer and TJ Schoonover. The three of us created this chair leadership. Kevin was like an identified sort of go-to for the executive council. But we started to develop a strategic plan in which we said, okay, we have LDA 1, we know what we do here, which is our grassroots, brass tacks, like what are the basics of leadership, like just small stuff, lecture, very heavy lecture based sort of workshop. All right, what do we want to do with LDA 2? Well, we're going to do some lecture, but we also want to do more practical hands-on experience, because here's where we want the rubber to start meeting the road, right? Of which LDA 2 this year is November 5th. It's a virtual conference. So we're asking all divisions. So if you're watching this, any division leaders, if you want to send anybody to this and sponsor them, you can register on the ICA website through the calendar. It's a nominal fee. I don't remember. I think it's like 25 or 50 bucks, something like that, somewhere in that range, to register and to send them. It's a half-day workshop in which we will do some lecturing, but we will also then do some practical, actual application work in the areas that are needed by ICA. So we decided to take, instead of like this example-based idea of like, oh, how can you apply these things? We said, no. We really wanted that change, and Kevin was on board with us when we did that. But we said, we really got to take current issues. So we took what we have right now and said, okay, what does ICA need? What do our counselors say we need to start doing and working on? And we're going to march forward with that. So this LDA is going to be different. This LDA, we're going to tackle real issues that are happening right now for ICA, for our counselors in the state, and how we can come together with fresh ideas, fresh perspectives, real plans, and bring that to leadership to say, hey, this is how we want to move forward. So any division leaders that want to send your people and you've got stuff you want to tackle, tell them, bring that, send that to me, send that to TJ, and we will add this stuff to help this get tackled so that we get folks ready to go, because LDA 3 is a mentorship-based experience workshop. We want to partner participants that have done 1 and 2 with real leaders, right? So folks who are in these positions to take these plans and start to implement these things, really start to put them forward. Now, again, they don't have to be these big plans. They can be little committees. They can be, events. They can be workshops, whatever it is. We want to tackle that because this is the work that we're doing, right? So one of the things that has been brought forth is thinking about the counseling compact and how we as counselors will have to work together to make this happen if we want that to happen, and how to bring this about and what plans we need, right? And how to tackle this. So that's already on the plan and on the docket for LDA 2, November 5th. So really that's sort of where this came from. And as Kevin stepped away, I became identified the leader, and I was like, oh, the chair, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And because of my big mouth and because of things, and I was like, hey, aren't there better ways to do this? And I stepped in for somebody one time to do Robert's rules for ICA, and they were like, you're a good parliamentarian, let's keep you. And then it became a thing because when Illinois School Counseling Association decided to disassociate, I was a part of the governing, or I was a parliamentarian that had them help them to do it correctly. And so I was asked to come back, and I'm always happy to help out because Illinois Counseling Association is a second home for me. I love the people there. I love everybody that I meet. I love the folks. I mean, again, just the energy. Like, I love connecting with everybody. I genuinely have this just awesome feeling when I'm around all of us at ICA. And so, that's what led to that. And then because of that, and my big mouth, it led to the chair of the bylaws committee, because I was like, hey, some of these bylaws don't look right. And they're like, hey, good, that's on you. And I'm like, oh, because I was like, okay, cool. Well, here's what we need to tackle and how we need to tackle it. And that's been fun. And I think that covers almost all of that.
Yeah. You got Leadership Development Academy, Parliamentarian, and Bylaws Committee. So perfect. All right. So then your fans want to know if you can share this information or not. Are you thinking about running for president of any of the other organizations?
I have always said, if I am nominated, I will do my best to run for the people and for our field. And so if folks nominate me to run for any position of leadership in any division or ICA, I will represent you to the best of my ability, because I want to be the representative that reminds folks that I am the person of the people. And that's what I'll do. So I won't actively run for anything, but if folks think I'm worthy enough to be nominated, I will accept a nomination.
All right. You heard it here first. Nominate him for everything.
Well, within reason. But yes, no, I will accept nominations if folks believe I am worthy and would like me to assist in any way.
100%. Well, now that you said that, people will be like, oh, remember what Hector said? Let's put him down for all this stuff.
Hey, nominations come up in what, April, May? So
Mhm.
folks, there's plenty of time, and there's always wonderful spaces to be held. And let's just honor the fact that we're still a grassroots organization that started as a group of people wanting to represent all of us, right, and have our voices heard. So I still believe that, and I still teach that with leadership development, and it's never going to change. I'm a man of the people. I always have been.
All right. Perfect. Perfect and perfect. All right. So, is there anything that you would like to tell anyone starting out in the field or who have been in the field for a while? Any other knowledge or wisdom you want to impart on them?
Oh, for folks that are new, it's okay. You're in the right place, in the right space, at the right time. And if you're not a part of ICA, become a part of ICA, because we've got your back. Or IMHCA, actually both, let's be honest. Um, and a few of the other divisions that might be of interest to you. Just think about it. But in reality, we've got your back. Take a breath. We're here for you. We know that you're new, and we don't expect you to be perfect. For those of us that have been doing this a while, whether it's small or long, or you've been here way longer than I have, remember that we're imperfect. And we were made that way. And that's cool. Um, and don't, I'm going to say this is a term that comes from nursing. And I got this from my wife. She's a nurse. Don't eat your young. And what I mean by that is, don't scare new people. Don't scare interns or practicum people. Don't make them do stuff that you wouldn't do yourself, or that you haven't fully explained. Remember when you were new. We all started this field brand new, and we wanted somebody to give us the guidance that our new folks are looking for. Be that person that you wanted if you didn't get them. And if you did get them, then be that person plus, because that's going to make a whole difference to these new people. And it means the world to them. It really does. But yeah, you new folks, this is why I say join. And I've said this to students. So I say join because we care about you. We care, and we want you to grow. We don't want you to burn out. So take care of yourselves for everybody.
Perfectly said. Couldn't have said it better myself. All right. So then, before the most important question, the second most important question. So, is there anything that you would like to say that I haven't had a chance to ask you about?
Coresair Mack for ICA President.
Uh-oh. Second person that said that over the interview. I don't know if they're ready for me and all my radical ideas.
You know what? Radical just means you need some grassroots support.
That's true. That
Think you
is
know where
true.
to find that?
Right. Well, if I get nominated for president, I'm purposely going to nominate you for president.
Hey, I will happily run against you, and if I know you're nominated, I will decline that. I will decline to accept because I know you're running.
Yeah, then I'll decline to accept also because I.
Nope, I'll be like Corsair's got to get it first. There's no other way to do this.
I'm like, Hector worked in Mexico. I haven't even been outside of the United States. I've only been to 3 other states, so he has more world experience than I do. He's going international, everybody. All right, so now for the most important question: where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, and if you would like to reach me, my email is Zavala Hector, so my last name, first name, at the letter Y, right? Mail, mail.com. So it's Yahoo's ill-advised soiree into Gmail territory. So please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I am fastest at email. And if not, you can find me on National Lewis's website, nl.edu. And I have a National Lewis email there. You can email me. And please know, I am more than happy to always talk to anybody and answer questions or even talk about the field or just talk about mental health issues that affect Latinx communities. I'm here for all of us.
Yeah, perfect, perfect, and perfect. So you heard it here, folks. Reach out to him, talk to him, gauge his ideas because he has a lot of ideas. And yeah, make yourselves known because we're trying to make some changes for the better, of course. And we definitely need your help to do it. But reach out to him, not to me, though. I'm too busy.
Well, if you reach out to Corsair, I promise you, you'll still get support. It may go the roundabout way, but we'll get there.
Right. AKA, I'll just forward you to Hector. Right? Sure. Exactly. All right, everybody. Well, that is it for this interview. Again, Hector, thank you very much for doing this.
Well, Corsair, thank you for your time. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. I had a lot of fun. You're a great presence. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. And hopefully we'll be able to do this again soon sometime.
By all means, please let me know. I'm always happy to do any topic. So please reach out.
All right, definitely. I appreciate it. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for coming in and listening to this interview. This is Coresair Mack, President of the Illinois Mental Health Counselors Association. And I'll see you guys at the next one. Take care.